everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to our community meetup today, our wellness meetup, and we have got a wonderful speaker lined up for you. So as you can see, here we are in London with Lee, our lovely Lee. So just in case you don't know me, I'm Claudia. I'm the nutritional therapist here on Goldster, and I run the advanced health community. And we have Lee.
I'm Lee. I'm a human givens therapist, and I am the facilitator and host of the emotional health group, where we explore topics and tools for emotional balance. So I see many familiar faces, and a big warm welcome to you.
And so welcome, and also a big warm welcome to our amazing speaker who we've got lined up for you today. And you know, Sophie, we've been waiting to speak to you for weeks and months, because over the course of our nutrition sessions and within our advanced health community, we've spoken so often of the benefits of mushrooms, and particularly medicinal mushrooms, and what are they and how could they help, and you know, what's safe, where's the research, you know, all these. We've got lots and lots of questions lined up for you, but let me just begin by introducing everyone to you and just explaining that this is Sophie, who is the educational lead at Hifas da Terra. Hifas da Terra is in my opinion, as a nutritionist, is the most professional, the most ethical, the safest possible brand that you could, a really trustworthy brand for the mushrooms. As Sophie is a medical herbalist and naturopath with a thriving clinic in London, formulating bespoke botanicals under sharing plant wisdom, tailored to individual needs. Her clients visit her for a myriad of health challenges and imbalances, ranging from digestive to cognitive, emotional, autoimmunity, and fertility. Having learnt healing traditions from around the world, spending 2 years working at the award-winning Kamaila in Koh Samui, it has been Sophie's mission to educate and empower groups and individuals to look after their health from a preventative perspective, harnessing the healing properties of plants and fungi. Sophie, that must have been amazing living in Koh Samui for 2 years.
That's what I was just thinking.
It was. I was very lucky to have that opportunity. So before I retrained as a medical herbalist, so I've been a herbalist for a decade now, but my career before that was very high stress in the fashion industry, and I decided to leave that industry, and Kamalaya is this amazing award-winning healing sanctuary in Thailand, and they kind of poached me to do their PR and marketing. So that's really where I got into natural health, met a huge amount of naturopaths and nutritionists, and that's where my kind of dream to get into herbal medicine really began.
That's amazing. And you know, Sophie's been featured in the Times, the Telegraph, British Vogue, Sheer Lux, True Health, many other titles. Wow. Sophie also writes for a wealth of magazines and journals on health and well-being, and is set to co-host retreats and recalibrate the senses this September in Bali. Oh, we might be joining you, Sophie.
It's my first ever retreat, actually combining medicinal mushrooms with botanicals with energy medicine. So it's very exclusive, just 15 places, and we've only started promoting it, so we're a bit behind on the promotion.
No, I'm sure they'll fill up really quickly. So do you want to start off just by telling us a little bit about your journey around fungi and mushrooms, and how you developed your interest, and what you found along the way?
Yeah, it's quite an unusual story, really. So I was diagnosed with a type of skin cancer in my early 30s, and I was actually working with a medical herbalist in North London at the time, a very good person who trained under a French school in Paris in endobiogenic medicine, which is all to do with hormones. And hormones can have a huge part in skin cancer in particular. So he advised me, as part of my herbal tinctures, to prepare me for this upcoming surgery, which I was really fearful about. He advised me to take a medicinal mushroom called reishi. So at the time I was studying herbal medicine, but mushrooms weren't a huge part of my 5-year course. We were really sticking to the botanicals and the herbs. So this was my first experience of taking a medicinal mushroom. So again, about 10 years ago, actually 12 years ago. And reishi, I took in powdered capsule form alongside my herbal tinctures to really calm myself, to calm my nervous system, to reduce the anxiety pre-surgery. And this had a knock-on effect on my sleep, on my mood, and then on my whole immune system, because we have to be in a parasympathetic state in order to heal. So that means we, in the Western world, particularly living in cities, we're always on the go. We're always in something called fight or flight mode. So my herbalist was really trying to get me to calm down. And reishi did that in conjunction with my other kind of protocols. And that's where my interest really started. And as I went on this medicinal mushroom, sorry, I don't know if you've lost me.
No, it's all good.
Are you still there? Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, I've lost you. Yeah, you're back. Great. So on this medicinal mushroom journey, my dad actually told me my grandfather had been instrumental. So I never met my grandfather. He died of a cardiovascular incident in his early 50s. I never got to meet him, but he was actually instrumental in cleaning up the mushroom growing market after the war. And so he was teaching people in Kent to grow mushrooms in a clean way. And he was actually then shipping mushrooms down to Covent Garden Market. So I think the mushroom kind of gene was always there in the family from the start, but I didn't know that. So quite interesting.
Wow, that's great. And so, and tell us a little bit about Hifas da Terra and how they began and what their story is.
Hifas da Terra were on my radar, a bit like you said, because of their quality and because of their safety studies. And they've, as a company, been going for 25 years. So they're based in northern Spain, and they work with over 18,000 practitioners around Europe and the UK and Ireland. And really, they put 62% of profits back into research and innovation. So no other mushroom company has their level of research and expertise. So they were actually set up by a lady called Catalina, and it's still a family-run business, which is great. And they put 62% of profits back into research. So they run independent clinical trials with hospitals in Spain. They run 2 currently oncology trials in breast cancer and colorectal cancer. So Catalina, the founder, has done a PhD in integrative oncology, and right from the start they've really been invested in the environmental aspect. So Catalina's father was actually in agroforestry in Spain and working closely with the government. So as a company, they plant over 120,000 mycorrhized chestnut trees. So that basically means the mushroom spores are there when they plant the trees to help regenerate the forest. So they're actually an oxygen positive company. And it's really the research and the innovation that they do, and they're able to back up all of their research with this clinical trial and this evidence that they've been able to go on and make quite strong concentrated extracts and nano emulsions, as well as mushroom powders. So yeah, they've been going for 25 years. So even though medicinal mushrooms are trending right now, they know what they're doing.
And that's right, because the marketplace is absolutely flooded, isn't it? Lion's mane is a really popular one. But could you just explain to us why it's not worth necessarily buying a cheaper version? Like, what's the difference? How
Yeah.
do you know how would you know if a mushroom supplement is a good quality one or not?
That's a really good question, and I feel that's something that the general public don't really know. They don't really know what to look for on the labels. And now, as you say, as the medicinal mushroom market has literally exploded, it's on the tip of everyone's tongue. You do need to know what to look for and how to distinguish a safe product, a clean product, and indeed a product that's going to have some therapeutic value. So the first thing to look out for is that the brand is certified organic. So you've got to look for the certification on the label. They can't just say they're organic. And the reason this is so important when it comes to mushrooms is because mushrooms are like sponges. They're natural chelators. So in the wild, they're going to pull up any potential toxins or pollutants or heavy metals that are in the soil. And we all know how poor the soil quality is in the UK, for instance. So this applies not only to nutraceuticals, so mushroom supplements, this also applies to culinary mushrooms that you might be buying in the supermarket. It is much better to buy organic mushrooms because we don't know otherwise what's in the soil, and that lovely health-giving mushroom could pull something up. So for instance, when I've been doing trainings in some health food stores, people have said to me, oh, they went on a trip to China and they bought some shiitake back from China, which is a lovely culinary mushroom and also a medicinal mushroom. And they actually said the shiitake smelt of petrochemicals. So it's, it really goes to show how much these mushrooms can actually pull up from the environment. And if the environment isn't clean, then you might have an issue. And that mushroom could become toxic. So number one, certified organic. Number two is not so obvious and not so well known, and that is we like to avoid something called MOG products. So by that, I mean mushroom grown on grain. Mushroom on grain is an MOG product. And a lot of mushrooms for therapeutic use and in the supermarket will be grown on grain as the substance that it's feeding off of. And that's because it's very cheap and very quick and easy. So it's the quickest, cheapest manufacturing, producing way for mushrooms. But that lovely mushroom in the wild would actually, in most cases, be grown on wood. So it would be found on decaying wood or on trees. So at Hifas da Terra, we grow all of our mushrooms on wood chips, or they're grown on chestnut tree logs in the forest, with one exception, which is a mushroom called cordyceps. And I'll tell you about cordyceps later. That's actually grown in an algae bioreactor, but I don't want to get off topic there. But a lot of mushrooms coming from the States, for instance, will be grown very quickly, very cheaply on grain. So there was actually a research paper in Nature magazine, an American publication, showing that 1 in 4 reishi products, so you'll remember reishi is a mushroom I first started taking to calm me down, didn't contain any mushroom at all. So the other thing is to make sure not only is it a non-MOG product, but that it's not something that we call a biomass product, because a biomass product is going to be picking up everything. So it's going to be picking up the mushroom, the roots of the mushroom, and what the mushroom was grown on. So for instance, in that study I just mentioned, where there was hardly any reishi in the end product, it was probably all of the oats or the grain or the substrate that the mushroom was grown on. So that's another really important distinction. And then, when you are using mushrooms for therapeutic use, it's much better to look for the standardized amount of bioactive compounds on the label. So really, when I go back to talking about mushrooms grown on grain, the other thing that does is it changes the polysaccharide count in mushrooms. So most brands will mention overall polysaccharide count, and actually you have to take it one stage further and look for a polysaccharide called a beta-glucan. And that is what is going to bring about the biological response. So looking for a standardized amount of beta-glucans. So in mushrooms, that's a 1 in 3, 1 in 6 chain. And I may be getting too sciencey now, but looking for a standardized amount of beta-glucans, that's the important polysaccharide that you want in a good level to bring about this therapeutic effect. So not looking just for the overall polysaccharide count, but looking for a standardized amount of beta-glucans. And you'll always get a higher level of beta-glucans naturally occurring on a mushroom grown on wood. Whereas a mushroom grown on grain will end up being a starchier product, and a starchier mushroom could potentially bloat you or feed dysbiosis in the gut or candida. So if someone comes to me and says, look, Sophie, I've tried medicinal mushrooms, they don't work. And I say, well, that's probably because you've had a starchy mushroom grown quickly on grain. So hopefully that explains it, which a lot of people don't know, those distinctions.
Thank you so much. It's really, really valuable, isn't it?
Fascinating. Can I just ask, Sophie? I'm totally unknowledgeable about mushrooms, so forgive me everyone for asking this question. But there's no such thing as a stupid question on Goldster. What is the
polysaccharides?
Yeah, what is that? Is that what is that? And and then the beta glucan, is that?
Yeah, so basically there's two main polysaccharides, beta glucans and alpha glucans. So beta glucans occur in mushrooms, in seaweed, and in some oats. And alpha glucans are also good, and you'll get them in higher amounts in things like oats. And basically polysaccharides are short chains. They have different chains of compounds. So in medicinal mushrooms, what makes a beta-glucan in medicinal mushroom is so therapeutic is it has a 1 in 3 and 1 in 6 chain. So it's that set of compounds that interact with our Peyer's patches in our lymph tissue. So when we take a mushroom in, it's able to withstand the stomach acid and reach our intestinal tract, and there it interacts with the Peyer's patches on our lymph tissue, and then it goes to things like our spleen and our bone marrow to increase something called phagocytosis, which is when and again, this may be too sciencey for everyone, but it's where imagine you have little pack men in the body, macrophages, and they gobble up all of the antigens and the viruses and the fungi. So these beta-glucans are able to stimulate phagocytosis, and they're able to do many different things to bring the body back into balance. And you'll find polysaccharides in lots of different foods, but it's actually the beta-glucans that are the important ones in this 1 in 3, 6 chain found in medicinal mushrooms.
It's absolutely fascinating. Like nearly 20 years ago, I wrote my nutrition dissertation on the role of beta-glucans for the HIV virus. Yeah, so we didn't really know much about mushrooms, but we knew 20 years ago, we knew quite a lot about the beta-glucans. And
and I think an important point to make is, even though medicinal mushrooms are trending right now, and they're certainly not going away anywhere because there's nothing like them in nature, it's important to remember that they've been used historically for hundreds of thousands of years. So in a way, they're kind of new to the West and exciting to the West. But in China, they've been used by the emperor. So reishi, that mushroom I talked about before, was known as the mushroom of immortality and youth, and was just reserved for the Emperor of China because of these life-giving properties. But they were boiled up in soups and broths and teas. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention in relation to your question about quality, safety, and efficacy is mushrooms on their own actually they're quite a rigid structure. So the polysaccharides I just talked about are quite a rigid, hard structure. So in order to make them more usable and bioavailable, they do need some vitamin C added to them. So, in TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, they always boiled them up to release these bioactive compounds. So they're very heat stable. But if you're taking it as a capsule, then it's good to have some vitamin C with it. So Hifas da Terra actually adds that right amount of vitamin C to help your body utilize those bioactive compounds. So, as a naturopath, I'm always squeezing vitamin C on my green vegetables to help me absorb the iron. So it's kind of the same thinking that we as humans need that little bit of vitamin C to make those bioactive compounds more bioavailable and easier to utilize in the body.
It's so fascinating. And did you know, Lee, there's beta glucans are also used in skincare?
I didn't know that actually.
And there are lots of Korean skincare brands.
Yes, very popular actually, the Korean ones.
Yeah, that are using the beta glucans.
How fascinating. Is there anyone that wouldn't use mushrooms? Is there any kind of type of condition or stomach issues or anything that you would steer away from mushrooms?
Yes. And that's a very good question. So number one, because in my private practice, I support children as well as adults. When I'm working with any client, I always have to check that they have no pre-existing allergy to mushrooms. And that's something you might forget if you're in a health food store or a pharmacy. You might just pick up a product and think, oh, I've heard this is great. But if you have a pre-existing allergy to mushrooms, particularly with children, they may not have had a culinary mushroom. So if I'm working with children, I always remind the parent and I say, has the child had culinary mushrooms in their diet? So there's one mushroom, shiitake, which I mentioned before, which is used a lot in cooking and also as a medicinal mushroom. And there's a small percentage of the population who will have an allergy to shiitake. So that's one to watch out for, because shiitake is in some formulas because it's got so many great qualities, particularly for the cardiovascular system. So there will be a small percentage of people who will have a skin rash reaction to shiitake. It's a very small percentage, but it's one to remember and look out for. And then generally, if people are on lots of different medications, you do need to check, because mushrooms do have these amazing qualities to balance blood pressure, to balance blood sugar. So for instance, if people are on medications for diabetes or blood pressure, you just wouldn't want to go in on a high dose, because they may need to adjust their medications accordingly. So always ease into a dose. And then I think the other guideline worth mentioning is when it comes to reishi. So the Latin name for reishi, Ganoderma lucidum, which is used a lot, and it's available a lot because it's so good for stress, for skin, for sleep, for hormones. It's really the multitasking mushroom. What we advise at Hifas da Terra is, if you are booked in for some surgery, even a tooth extraction, then come off your concentrated extract of reishi at least 72 hours prior to any kind of surgery, because in theory, reishi has a blood thinning effect. And that would be the same guidelines that I would give any client who was coming to see me and perhaps taking turmeric or high dose garlic or ginger, anything with a blood thinning quality. Then pre-surgery, come off of it well in advance and only start taking it again on medical advice once healed.
That's right.
So I think those are the
Always
main
check with
things.
your pharmacist. That's what we say.
Yes.
Always
Yeah.
check
GP, yeah.
with GP or pharmacist. And
Yeah.
so we've got a few questions coming in here, Sophie. Do you have a website or a book, or is there a way that people can?
Yes. So I have a few different websites. My main website as a medical herbalist is sharingplantwisdom.com. So I collaborate with a very good French herbalist who has a herbal dispensary in Crystal Palace. So that's how I see my clients, through Sharing Plant Wisdom. And then that amazing Bali retreat I mentioned, I also collaborated with another fantastic lady who I actually met in Thailand in Asia, who's an acupuncturist and an energy specialist. And she actually invited me into Hifas da Terra. So she has a huge knowledge of medicinal mushrooms. So her and I have a new website this year called try-living.com. So that's try-living.com. So that has all the kind of retreat information on it. But my herbal website is sharingplantwisdom.com.
Perfect. Thank you. And hifastaterra.com.
And hifasdaterra.co.uk.
Oh,
So
hifasdaterra.co.uk.
hifasdaterra.co.uk.
And you've been kind enough as well to give everyone a discount code.
Yes, that is Goldster. So exactly how you spell it, Goldster. And that's a discount off any product on the Hifas da Terra website, not the oncology support products, because that's a different type of product, but there's a huge wealth of products on hifasdaterra.co.uk. And we can go into more detail on the mushrooms.
I'm sure the questions are coming in. Caroline is just saying, doesn't organic mushrooms, they also grow in the ground? They do, don't they? Stephanie's asking, how would one know if it was MOG or non-MOG? Does it say mushrooms on grains?
So if you're buying a product in the store, then you'll know that it's not an MOG product, because it will have a high amount of beta glucans in it. If you're buying a mushroom in store, then it might not say. So I can now tell if we go to a supermarket and we can't find organic mushrooms, and let's say my husband buys just normal mushrooms, I can taste that the mushroom is sweeter. So what I would suggest is, if you're going to the farmer's market, have a good relationship with the suppliers at the farmer's market, because the farmer's market are more likely to have wild mushrooms or mushrooms grown on wood than the supermarket. And you can just ask them. They're very open, they're very transparent. So I would say get a good relationship going with your local farmer's market, and quite often those will be wild mushrooms.
Amazing. Jennifer's just saying, what a wonderful guest speaker. We're so lucky to have you, Sophie. So Vatsala is saying, if anyone is taking anti-cancer drugs for psoriasis, can they take this?
Yes. So the great thing about Hifas da Terra, and I don't think any other medicinal mushroom brand has a study like this, is we actually have a study with the concentrated extracts, which is what you would need. You would need a therapeutic dose on the drug liver pathway. So that's why Hifas da Terra have been able to go on and produce these very strong nanoemulsions that can be used alongside chemotherapy, alongside radiotherapy. And that trial is called the Medina trial. And basically what that shows is that nothing in the concentrated extracts or the medicinal mushroom pushes any pre-existing medications or drugs out of the liver. It's not affecting the detox pathways. So in liver detoxification, we refer to a pathway called the CYP450. And as a herbalist, it's a lot easier for me to work with medicinal mushrooms than it is with herbs, because a lot of herbs will affect that drug liver detox pathway. So a really good example of a widely used herb is St. John's wort, or Hypericum perforatum, which is a great happy herb that we use for mood boosting qualities and lots of different things. But St. John's wort would actually push those drugs out of the liver too quickly. So a good example of this is if someone's on the oral contraceptive pill and they take St. John's wort, they could actually get pregnant because the herb is pushing the drug out of the liver too quickly before it's done its job. Whereas medicinal mushrooms don't do that. And we've got this Medina trial to say that the Hifas da Terra concentrated extracts show no significant interaction with the drug liver pathway. And that also, as a herbalist, gives me confidence that I can use these strengths and these concentrated extracts at high dose, and it's not going to affect chemotherapy, radiotherapy, or many other conventional medicines that clients will be on, because let's face it, most people are on lots of different things. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Amazing. Gillian's got a great question here. What if you have had candida and thrush in the past? Can you still eat fungi due to the yeast feeding on the sugar?
So again, this is where with candida, you need to avoid starchy mushrooms. You need to avoid these MOG, mushroom grown on grain mushrooms, because this could potentially feed the candida and the dysbiosis in the gut. I would always, in cases of candida, work with a mushroom called shiitake, which you can get widely and use in soups and stews and broths, but I would also use it in concentrated extract because shiitake has antifungal properties, and also reishi has some antifungal properties as well, and it's going to both are going to support the overall immune system. So those are the two mushrooms I would work with, but I would avoid MOG products completely.
This actually is a really good segue, isn't it? Because in Advanced Health this week, we were talking about a condition called CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, from exposure to black mold. And the question came up, well, what about mushrooms? Oh, can we take mushrooms? I was like, I don't know, guys. Let's ask Sophie on Wednesday.
Yeah. So that's been coming up a lot for us. And I think partly because we've had all of this rain in the UK. So people are having a lot of mold issues in their homes. So the really important distinction here is mushrooms are macroscopic fungi. Mold is microscopic fungi. So the mycotoxins come from the microscopic fungi. So in theory, you're not going to have any issues eating mushrooms. However, Hifas da Terra do these triple analytical checks to make sure there's no mycotoxins in the product. And how I kind of answered the question before, you would need specific mushrooms that have these antifungal qualities, and all medicinal mushrooms are going to be gentle detoxifiers. So as soon as you start detoxifying the body with someone who has mold, they are going to release more mycotoxins. So again, this has to be done very, very gently. I would work with 3 particular mushrooms. So shiitake, as I mentioned, because of its antifungal properties, in conjunction with reishi, which also has research on its antifungal properties. And then I would also work with a less well-known mushroom called royal sun mushroom. So the Latin name is Agaricus blazei maril. So it's sometimes abbreviated to ABM. And this is actually a mushroom from Brazil. It's a culinary mushroom from Brazil. It looks a bit like the chestnut mushroom, and it's very high in these beta-glucans, which I talked about before, these biological response modifiers. So that's going to help support the immune system, which, you know, as you detox the mycotoxins, the immune system's going to need a lot of support. And actually, we do have another formula at Hifas which contains 2 other mushrooms for detoxification. And those, again, might not be mushrooms you've heard of. One is called Polyporus, which is an amazing mushroom. And I think Hifas are the only brand that works with Polyporus. And this works on the lymphatic system. So it's going to help drain the lymphatic system, support the lymphatic system, which is really important to have a healthy lymph when it comes to detoxifying harmful substances in the body. And the other mushroom in this formula is called maitake. And maitake really supports the liver. And the liver is going to need a lot of support when you're dealing with detoxification, when you're dealing with harmful substances, when you're dealing with mold. So again, there are a few mushrooms at your disposal, you know, because it's really important to support the elimination detoxification channels in the body. So yeah, there's a few ways of approaching this.
Oh, that's fascinating, isn't it?
Are there a whole range? I mean, how many mushrooms are there that you would use medicinally, or is it just a selection?
Yeah, so there's about 10 to 12 more mainstream medicinal mushrooms that are really, really useful. And different companies will work with different selection. The kind of main ones are, like, let's say the superheroes are reishi, so that's Ganoderma lucidum, which has been used for centuries in traditional Chinese medicine. And this is great for menopause, perimenopause, for helping with female health in particular, with stress, anxiety, sleep. It has these very anti-inflammatory, antioxidant qualities. So again, it's used in skincare to help calm the skin, and it has these anti-aging qualities. And then a mushroom that I absolutely love, and I personally take and rely on, is cordyceps. So the strain at Hifas da Terra that we use is called Cordyceps sinensis, and that in the wild would be found at high altitude in Tibet. And it's actually become an endangered species because when it was first discovered, people realized quickly that goats at high altitude were eating this mushroom and getting incredibly horny. So it oxygenates the body, it oxygenates the cells in the body. And, you know, nature has an amazing way of telling you what it does. So the fact that it's at high altitude, we lose oxygen, there's less oxygen in the air. So you've already got a clue as to what cordyceps can do. So basically, when men found this out, they really overused cordyceps in the wild. They foraged for it, but it has the same effect on women.
Sophie, does that help increase the nitric oxide levels?
Yes.
Because we've been talking in our advanced health all about nitric oxide and beetroot and oral biome,
yes,
that kind of thing. So
exactly.
perfect.
So, you know, that's why it became an endangered species. But then they discovered that cordyceps also has antiviral qualities. So it will be in a lot of our formulas to help people with things like long COVID and viruses in general. So cordyceps is one that I turn to for energy and cellular oxygenation, and even athletes use it. So you will find it in sports formulas to help with recovery, with muscle recovery, and also to help with performance. So, you know, even Olympic athletes would use cordyceps, and Hifas da Terra have worked with cyclists and Olympic skiers. So it is one that people do know about because it has this knock-on effect on brain health, on mood, on libido. It has a natural affinity for the lungs and the kidneys. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the kidneys are referred to as the seat of our qi, or our life force. They're our energy center. So cordyceps is one that we would use to really support the kidneys as well. And I think you'll remember at the start I was saying there was one mushroom that Hifas da Terra produce differently, and that is cordyceps, because it's an endangered species. So we have the strain CS4, which has the highest level of bioactive compounds that bring about this therapeutic effect. And we have to put it in an algae bioreactor, a clean substrate that the root can feed on, because in the wild, cordyceps would actually use an insect to form the fruiting body of the mushroom. So that's the bit above ground that you see. That's what we refer to as the mushroom. And Hifas da Terra, being predominantly very environmentally aware and a vegan brand, they don't want to harm any insects, and also filtering out any insect would be a nightmare. So a lot of cordyceps products that you might be able to find elsewhere might have some insect in them, because it would be so hard to filtrate that out. So we actually use the mycelium, which is the root, and we grow it in an algae bioreactor. And we get a lot of questions about what's the best part of the mushroom to use. Is it the root? Is it the fruiting body? And in traditional Chinese medicine, they tended to use the fruiting body, the mushroom, the bit above ground. But you will find a lot of important bioactive compounds in the root still, and particularly in herbal medicine, we'll use different parts of the plants for different things. So, you know, we use the roots a lot. The roots tend to be more adaptogenic, and that's what medicinal mushrooms are. They are adaptogens. They help us adapt to stress. They give us resilience. They increase stamina, and they bring the body back into balance. So that's why they're safe to take long term. A lot of herbs you can use short term, but medicinal mushrooms are safe to take long term.
I was going to ask you that if that's what you do, you recommend people literally is instead of a multivitamin or alongside whatever else they're taking.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's still always good to take short breaks, but it depends on the individual. You know, if they're in quite a good state of health, but they know they're going through quite a high stress time at home or through work, then you know, you can increase your dose while you're going through that episode. I think sometimes it's good to take a natural break of a couple of weeks in the summer when your immune system potentially is stronger. But then I also like to take them preventatively. So I really prefer to work with clients and work with them to prevent disease. So they're great to take preventatively. And lion's mane is the third well-known mushroom. Yes, which I think is a really good one to take preventatively for cognitive health, and for gut health, because it has this incredible effect on not only the gut and the gut microbiome, but it works on the gut brain axis, and it helps with cognition, memory, focus, all of these different things. So with my clients who potentially have dementia or Alzheimer's in the family, so in my case, my aunt had early onset of dementia, and my grandmother on my other side had late onset. So I started taking lion's mane preventatively a few years ago, because there's so much that can be prevented, as we know.
And Sophie, someone's just saying here that I bought some miracle coffee substitute, and after drinking it, my tummy turned into washing machine disposers. Does that mean it's not worth persisting with? And actually, identify with you, Stephanie, because I remember taking a lion's mane coffee, and the same thing happened, because I can't take very high FODMAP foods. Does this go back to what you were saying, the way it's created and the way it's grown is key point?
Absolutely. And I'm not a coffee drinker, but I do get asked about the mushroom coffee products a lot. And what I would say is it's better to buy a mushroom powder on its own, like a micronized mushroom that is just pure mushroom, that has no fillers or solvents or additives added to it. Because I think what is happening with some of these, I'm not going to name any brands, mushroom coffee companies, is they are adding a solvent of some sort. They're spraying the mushroom with a solvent so that it mixes in better and easier into the coffee. Whereas what you want is you want a pure mushroom, micronized mushroom powder with no fillers, no additives, that you'll have to whisk in a bit because it wouldn't naturally dissolve. So that could be the case. It could be that there's a solvent in there that is you're sensitive to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and Stephanie's also asked, my best friend has had colorectal cancer and has had most of her large colon removed. She's always worried it could come back. Is there any mushroom product you'd recommend for anti-cancer properties? And maybe, Stephanie, you could tell us a little bit about the research project that Hifas is doing around colorectal cancer.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, so Hifas has developed these very strong nano emulsions, because when it comes to cancer and also the surgeries and the conventional route, the body needs a huge amount of support. So we have therapeutic concentrated extracts that I use in clinic, and that can be bought online and in health food stores, but you are going to need a much more bioavailable concentrated extract, which is a dose equivalent to about taking 20 capsules of a concentrated extract. So in order to get that higher dose, it needs to be in a nanoemulsion form, so that the body can really easily absorb the concentrated amount that it needs. And with any form of cancer, the best thing to do is to get a synergy of medicinal mushrooms. So there's been a lot of research that medicinal mushrooms, from an immune supportive standpoint, work better in synergy. So there's 3 mushrooms in particular, reishi, shiitake, and maitake, that have been shown in combination to work very well from an immune standpoint. So you're going to have to support the immune system. When it comes to digestive cancer, again, lion's mane is the mushroom that people turn to for any digestive ailments, because lion's mane has this ability to soothe the digestive tract and heal the gut lining. It also has these antimicrobial effects. So research and studies have been done with lion's mane to show it has an effect against H. pylori, and sometimes, particularly in stomach cancers, there can be a higher amount of H. pylori. So lion's mane has this naturally occurring antimicrobial effect. So again, you would need to work with a practitioner who can dose the highest concentration, the highest, most bioavailable concentration, and the right synergy of medicinal mushrooms, because there's a whole host of medicinal mushrooms out there that have these anti-cancer effects. They work in very different ways to support the immune system. They have antiviral effects, they have anti-inflammatory effects, and the great thing about medicinal mushrooms is they're something that we call prebiotics. So lion's mane is a really useful prebiotic that actually supports the good bacteria in your gut, and the more diverse your microbiome is, the more good bacteria you have in your gut, the better off you are from an immune health standpoint. So it's also this prebiotic effect. And going back to the oncology studies that Hifas da Terra are doing in breast cancer and colorectal cancer, I can't say too much about these studies because they're in motion at the moment. So specific information on them will be released. These studies do take a couple of years, and we're about 2 years in. So I believe results will be brought out, but this beneficial effect on the gut microbiota and being able to reset the microbiota is definitely what the studies and science is showing.
Okay, well, that's brilliant. And Stephanie's just saying that sounds just what she needs, because obviously she's a bit nutritionally depleted, because everything she eats is eliminated almost immediately. So she's got some assimilation issues there.
Yes, it's worth saying that Hifas da Terra have a biomedical support email address. So anyone can email in and put their case forward and get advice. So again, you can find that through the Hifas da Terra website, and then they'll be able to advise you through that email address.
Honestly, it's fantastic support. I've emailed it myself as a practitioner asking for various clients. Incredible support. As Suri's saying, I heard that Prime Minister Modi, if I said his name right,
I think
Modi,
so.
Modi,
Is that right? Is that right, Suri?
Modi eats eats special mushrooms from the Himalayas. Is this the reason why he's so energetic, alert, and known to sleep very few hours?
It sounds like that's cordyceps. It
Yes,
sounds like he's
high up,
eating
high
cordyceps.
altitude.
Yeah, yes. And actually, that's a good point. So we would say, because this mushroom is often referred to as the mushroom of energy and vitality, we would often say, if you are taking this mushroom in micronized powder form or concentrated extract, take it earlier in the day, unless you want to go and have an all-nighter.
All night.
Yeah.
Go out raving.
And then you can take it in the
A longevity rate.
Yeah.
That's what we need, Goldsters.
Yes, exactly. So with
Get on the
something like
mushrooms and down the road.
cordyceps, you want to take it kind of morning or midday. There are some people who are fine taking it later in the day, but if you're very sensitive, then take it earlier.
Also, sorry, we should have said this at the very beginning. I'm so sorry. But also, just to be clear, none of these mushrooms that we are talking about today are psychoactive in any way.
No, exactly.
Do
yes.
not.
Yeah, that's a very good
there'll be
point.
no lovely hallucinations.
Yeah, so yeah, but because when I say I work with medicinal mushrooms, people's eyes light up and they assume I'm working with magic mushrooms. So that's a whole different genus. That's a whole different family.
Sophie, we'll get you back another time to talk about
magic mushrooms. Yeah. Are common garden button mushrooms? Is there anything in those? And oyster mushrooms?
Yes, 100%. And I think that's, as a naturopath, that's something I like to reinforce, is there's so much good and so much value in having normal everyday culinary mushrooms. They're still nutrient dense, they're still functional foods. And there have actually been really good studies done on culinary mushrooms in Singapore, very good Singapore studies, to show that people who have 2 to 3 portions a week of edible culinary mushrooms, so like oyster, like shiitake, that will have benefits on the gut microbiome and on cognitive health and healthy aging. So even the white button mushroom, as you said, that's going to be of huge value, as is the chestnut mushroom. So just getting those mushrooms into your diet 2 to 3 times a week, you will benefit.
But make sure they're organic. Is the idea.
Make sure they're organic, yeah.
If you can. And I know a lot of people like to put their mushrooms out in the sunshine as well. Just put them on a ledge in the sun to activate the vitamin D, to increase the vitamin D.
I never knew that. This has just been riveting.
Andrea's asking, on antibiotics for my affected lung, what do you suggest?
So here you would need a combination of mushrooms that are going to support the digestive system and help improve the gut microbiome, which will have probably taken a little bit of a hit from the antibiotics. So again, if you're able to go on Hifas da Terra's website, you will find synergies of formulas that support the microbiota, the microbiome. So things like oyster mushroom that we talked about, that's really good for digestive health. Lion's mane's really good for digestive health. Shiitake's really good for digestive health. So also get some oyster mushroom into your diet, because they're so delicious.
They are delicious.
And it will be that prebiotic effect as well, which will really help support the gut alongside antibiotics and post.
And gut support, of course, is so important for rheumatoid arthritis. So, but is there any other angle that you'd go down with the rheumatoid arthritis? Gillian's asking.
Yes. So sometimes, so in herbal medicine, this is a really interesting one. Sometimes, rheumatoid arthritis can affect women more who've had a lot of stress, who've had a lot of emotional stress, and it can be an autoimmune condition. And sometimes, even viruses are at play. So you really want to support the gut health, the gut of the body, and you also want to look at overall immune support. So mushrooms like reishi, mushrooms like cordyceps, very anti-inflammatory, antioxidant qualities. There's a synergy of 5 different mushrooms which work really well together to support the immune system. You want to do quite a supportive formula. And then one mushroom that's not technically a mushroom, but is put in the medicinal mushroom category that I haven't talked about, that Hifas have started working with, is chaga. So chaga is put in that overall immune formula, and it's very antioxidant. And again, because chaga is a bit like cordyceps, it's been really become an endangered species. We have to make sure that it's produced in a very sustainable way, which is why it's taken us a long time to find the right environment where it's not one that can be manufactured at all. It has to be found as it would be in nature on birch trees and in forests. Science hasn't found a way to produce it like the other mushrooms on wood chips or in mushroom tunnels. So chaga has to come from the wild, be harvested in that way, and that would also be an important one to consider. And it's one I like to use occasionally, but I don't want to overuse it for environmental reasons, but it's a good one to consider.
That makes sense. Tim and Angie both asked about cooking, but the mushrooms are very heat stable, aren't they?
Very heat stable. Yeah. So again, cooking is better. You don't want to eat a raw mushroom. Some are okay, but really you want to cook the mushroom. That's a general rule, and it's heat stable. And with the mushroom powders, that's why you can put them in hot drinks, because it's not going to damage any of the beta-glucans or the bioactive compounds. If anything, it will enhance. Yeah.
Amazing. And just to reiterate, the website is hifasdaterra.co.uk, but .com will probably, I'm sure it will get you there.
Yeah, I think it will go naturally over to .co.uk. I just know the Goldster code works specifically on the UK website.
And the Goldster code is Goldster, just in case anyone's joined later. Jennifer's saying we'll have to watch again. So much information and so interesting. Thank you. A last question here, but we've got 2 very quick questions. Tim's saying, is there any reason why certain mushrooms cause cramps? I've never heard of that.
So again, would that be a mushroom that you've eaten, a culinary mushroom that you've eaten, or would that be a supplement? Because
I imagine it's from food.
It's lion's mane capsule.
If it hasn't been...
Oh, it's a lion's mane
capsule. Okay, yeah. So lion's mane is an interesting one. So I like to introduce lion's mane in capsule form, gently, and then increase the dose, because it has this gentle detoxifying effect, and also it has this antimicrobial effect. So you can get something called die-off. So if someone's got a lot of intestinal dysbiosis, or there's a lot of work to be done on the gut, sometimes there is this 1 to 2 weeks where the lion's mane is working really hard, and there can be a bit of die-off of the bad bacteria. So it could be for that reason, or it could be, you don't have to say the name of the brand or the supplement, but lion's mane is one that you do have to introduce slowly and work up to a higher dose.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So there are lots of questions coming through, guys. I'm so sorry we're sort of out of time, but if you've got any questions about specific conditions and which mushrooms to take, the very best thing is to go to Hifas da Terra website and find the email address to ask for guidance, because they are so incredibly helpful, and they will tell you. Sylvia's saying I take half a teaspoon of lion's mane with my collagen. Is that too much?
Half a teaspoon is fine. Half a teaspoon is fine. Just remember, if it's in an organic micronized powder form, you're going to be getting quite a lot of fiber in there, because it's just finely milled mushroom. So it depends how much fiber you naturally have in your diet and how sensitive you are to fiber. Some people can actually go much higher than that and have, 1 to 2 tablespoons. I stick to half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of lion's mane powder in my morning smoothie, and I add the same amount of cordyceps, just because I've got a lot of fiber in my diet naturally. So again, you can work up to a higher dose if needed.
Oh my gosh, Sophie, there's so much. We could keep talking for hours, but I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I've got to get Nutrition Club started. So
thank you so much. Absolutely fascinating, and thank you so much everyone for joining today, and thank you, Tim. Definitely would love to get Sophie back for round 2.
Would that be okay, Sophie? Come.
Of course. I would love to.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.